The Siberian wind cut across the frozen expanse like a serrated blade, rattling the metal poles of the expedition's tents. Dr. Elena Vostok adjusted the strap of her pack, her breath misting in the frigid air as she peered over the edge of a jagged fissure that had opened in the permafrost. Below, a gaping maw of darkness yawned wide, its edges glistening with strange crystalline formations. "This is it," Elena murmured, her voice barely audible over the gusts. She turned to her team, her blue eyes sharp beneath the frost-encrusted hood of her jacket. "This is what the satellite picked up. The thermal anomaly is coming from down there." Standing nearest was Malik Hamid, a geologist whose wiry frame belied the strength with which he carried his gear. "Thermal anomalies don't just show up under 40 meters of ice," he said, his brow furrowed. "It's either geothermal activity or something else entirely." "Something else is why we're here," Elena replied, her tone firm. She had led countless expeditions into Siberia's harsh wilderness, unearthing ruins, fossils, and mysteries thought long buried by time. This, however, felt different. Behind them, Dr. Saskia Brandt, a biologist specializing in extremophiles, knelt near the fissure's edge. She brushed a gloved hand across the crystalline deposits and frowned. "These aren't natural formations," she said, holding up a fragment that shimmered faintly in the pale light. "They look engineered." Before anyone could respond, a low hum vibrated through the ground, so faint it could have been imagined. The team froze. Elena's heart quickened as the sound faded, leaving only the howling wind in its wake. "Seismic activity?" Malik asked, but his voice wavered. "No," Elena said, her gaze fixed on the abyss. "It's something deeper." The team worked quickly to secure ropes and harnesses, their movements precise despite the cold biting at their fingers. As the leader, Elena descended first, her headlamp slicing through the darkness. The walls of the fissure gleamed with the same crystalline structure Saskia had collected above, their surfaces emitting a faint bioluminescent glow. When her boots touched solid ground, Elena scanned the chamber. It was vast, the ceiling arching high above like the nave of an ancient cathedral. Stalactites dripped with the same crystalline substance, casting refracted light across the cavern. A faint warmth radiated from the walls, an impossibility given their location. "Clear," Elena called, and one by one, the others descended. Malik, then Saskia, followed by Viktor Ivanov, the team's physicist, and finally Tomas Reyes, the expedition's technician and communications expert. As the group regrouped, Tomas activated a portable scanner, its screen flickering with readings. "Electromagnetic interference is off the charts," he said, his brow furrowing. "It's like the cave is alive." "That's impossible," Victor muttered, but his skeptical tone wavered as he adjusted his own device. "The frequencies are structured, almost like a signal." Saskia's voice broke the tension. "Elena, over here." The team gathered around a section of the cavern wall, where Saskia's headlamp illuminated strange markings etched into the rock. The symbols were angular and interwoven, unlike any script they had seen before. "Human-made?" Malik asked, leaning closer. "No," Saskia said softly. "Not human." A chill that had nothing to do with the cold swept through Elena. The markings weren't random. They were deliberate, their arrangement evoking an unsettling sense of purpose. Tomas's scanner beeped sharply, the sound echoing through the cavern. "The interference is spiking," he said, glancing at Elena. "We're standing on something big." As if on cue, the ground beneath them shuddered, a deep vibration that sent a cascade of crystalline dust falling from above. The team staggered, bracing themselves against the walls. "We need to move," Elena said, her voice steady despite the rising tension. She pointed toward a tunnel leading deeper into the earth, its entrance framed by jagged crystalline formations. "Are you sure about this?" Victor asked, his face pale. "Do you want to climb back up in the middle of a collapse?" Elena shot back. Without waiting for a response, she led the way into the tunnel. The passage sloped downward, narrowing as they ventured deeper. The glow from the crystals grew brighter, casting eerie patterns on the walls. The hum they had felt earlier returned, louder now, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to resonate in their bones. Elena's mind raced. She had encountered the inexplicable before, ancient artifacts, lost civilizations, but nothing like this. This was beyond anything she had prepared for. They emerged into a second chamber, smaller than the first, but dominated by a massive structure in its center. It looked organic, its surface smooth and dark, pulsating faintly as if alive. The markings from the walls above were etched across its surface, glowing faintly in time with a rhythmic hum. "What is it?" Saskia whispered, her voice trembling. "Not natural," Malik said. Elena stepped closer, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, but curiosity propelled her forward. She reached out, her gloved hand brushing the surface. The hum intensified, and for a split second, the chamber was bathed in blinding light. When the light faded, the structure's surface shimmered, and the markings shifted, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. A low, resonant tone filled the air, vibrating through their chests. "Elena," Tomas said, his voice sharp. "Something's happening." Before anyone could react, the ground trembled violently. Cracks spidered across the walls, and the tunnel behind them collapsed in a spray of crystalline shards. "There's no way back," Victor shouted. Elena turned to the structure. A portion of its surface had receded, revealing what looked like an entrance. Light pulsed from within, inviting yet ominous. "We go forward," Elena said, her voice firm. "Into that?" Saskia asked, eyes wide. Elena met her gaze. "It's the only way." As the team stepped into the structure, the light engulfed them, its warmth erasing the cold of the cave. For a moment, there was nothing but silence and brightness. Then the ground disappeared beneath their feet, and they fell. Elena's senses returned one at a time. First, the sound, a rhythmic rustling, like wind brushing through a forest of strange leaves. Then, the scent, a mix of damp earth and something unfamiliar, metallic and sweet. When she opened her eyes, her breath caught. The world around her was alive in ways that defied comprehension. Towering, bioluminescent plants swayed gently, their stalks casting an eerie glow of greens and blues. The sky above was a deep lavender, streaked with swirling silver clouds. Vibrant fungi sprouted from the ground, their caps undulating as though breathing. "Elena," a voice called weakly. She turned to see Saskia sprawled nearby, blinking as she pushed herself upright. Beyond her, Malik and Victor stirred, while Tomas sat clutching his scanner, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Everyone okay?" Elena asked, her voice shaky. "Defines okay," Malik muttered, brushing dirt from his jacket. Where are we?" Saskia said, her voice quivering as she looked around. The question hung in the air, unanswered. The last thing any of them remembered was stepping into the strange structure in the cave, the blinding light, and the sensation of falling. Now they stood in a world that looked like Earth, but felt utterly alien. "This isn't possible," Victor said, adjusting his glasses as he scanned the horizon. "The vegetation, the atmosphere, none of this should exist." "Elena," Tomas called, staring at the screen of his scanner. "We're still on Earth?" "The readings match." "But this isn't our Earth." Elena felt a knot form in her stomach. "Explain?" Tomas hesitated. "The electromagnetic patterns here are similar to the interference we detected in the cave, but they're stronger, more coherent. It's like we've crossed into a parallel version of our planet." "A parallel Earth?" Saskia repeated, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Think about it," Malik said, stepping forward. "If that structure in the cave was some kind of portal, it might have transported us to an alternate reality. A world where humans never evolved." The group fell silent, the weight of the realization pressing down on them. "We need to figure out how to survive," Elena said, taking charge. "First, we need to find food and water. And then, we find a way back." "Back?" Victor scoffed, gesturing to the alien landscape. "Look around you. Do you see any sign of the portal? We're stuck here." Before Elena could respond, a distant, guttural screech cut through the air. The sound was primal, filled with menace, and it sent a chill down their spines. "What the hell was that?" Saskia whispered, clutching her pack. The group instinctively huddled together, scanning the forest for movement. Then they saw it, a silhouette moving through the undergrowth, large and sinuous. The creature's skin shimmered like oil, and its elongated limbs moved with predatory grace. "Run," Elena hissed, grabbing Saskia's arm. The team sprinted through the alien forest, their boots pounding against the soft, moss-like ground. The screech echoed again, closer this time, followed by a cacophony of clicks and chirps. More shapes emerged from the shadows, their glowing eyes locked onto the fleeing humans. Elena's lungs burned as she pushed herself harder. The terrain was uneven, the strange vegetation snagging at her legs. Malik stumbled and fell, but Tomas yanked him to his feet. "There!" Elena shouted, pointing to a cluster of massive, hollowed-out trees ahead. The group scrambled into one of the openings, pressing themselves against the cool, pulsing interior. The clicking sounds grew louder, accompanied by heavy, deliberate footfalls. Through a gap in the bark, Elena caught a glimpse of one of the creatures. It was taller than a man, its body covered in chitinous plates that glinted faintly. Its head was elongated, its mouth filled with needle-like teeth. The creature paused, tilting its head as if listening. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, with a sharp exhalation, the predator turned and disappeared into the forest, the others following in its wake. Elena let out a shaky breath. "What the hell are those things?" "Predators," Saskia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're the apex species here, and we're their prey." Malik leaned back against the tree's interior, his chest heaving. "We can't survive out there. Not without weapons. Not without a plan." Elena nodded, her mind racing. "We need to keep moving, find higher ground, and figure out how to stay ahead of them. And we need to understand this world. What's safe, what isn't?" Tomas, still clutching his scanner, spoke up. "There's something else. The interference is stronger near those creatures. I think they're connected to this world in ways we can't even begin to understand." "That doesn't help us now," Victor snapped. "What matters is staying alive." The team spent the next hour recovering their strength and taking inventory of their supplies. Rations were limited, and their water filters were useless without a safe source to draw from. As they prepared to leave the shelter of the hollow tree, Saskia crouched by a patch of glowing moss. "This," she said, holding up a sample, "might be edible. If the bioluminescence is a byproduct of some symbiotic relationship, it could be nutrient-rich. Or it could poison us," Victor countered. "We don't have many options," Saskia shot back. Elena intervened. "We'll take samples, but we're not risking anyone until we know for sure. Let's keep moving." The group emerged cautiously, the forest now eerily quiet. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified by their heightened senses. After an hour of careful trekking, they came across something unexpected, a massive obelisk half buried in the ground. Its surface was covered in the same symbols they had seen in the cave, glowing faintly in the dim light. "What is this?" Malik asked, his voice filled with awe. "A clue," Elena said, stepping closer. "Maybe you can tell us how to get back." As she reached out to touch the obelisk, a faint vibration coursed through it. The symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into a new pattern. A low hum filled the air, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. "We shouldn't be here," Victor said, backing away. Before anyone could respond, the forest erupted with noise. The predators had returned, their glowing eyes visible through the trees. "Run!" Elena shouted, grabbing her team and pulling them away from the obelisk. The air in the cavern was stifling, heavy with an unidentifiable odor that clung to their lungs and made every breath feel like a labor. Elena clutched her headlamp tightly, its narrow beam slicing through the darkness. They had fled deeper into the alien forest until the terrain shifted, leading them to a subterranean tunnel carved into the ground, as if beckoning them into its depths. The predator's pursuit had ceased, abruptly and unervingly, just as they crossed into the tunnel. "We shouldn't have come here," Victor muttered, his voice a low growl of frustration. His usually calm demeanor had cracked, revealing a man unraveling under the strain. Elena shot him a glare. We didn't have a choice. Tomas crouched by the wall, running his scanner over the intricate carvings that lined the smooth, metallic surface. The symbols glowed faintly, pulsing in sync with a distant hum that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. These carvings, Tomas began, his voice trembling slightly, are a language, or something close to it. They are alive. What do you mean alive? Saskia asked, crouching beside him. They're dynamic, responding to some kind of input. The scanner is picking up electromagnetic fluctuations that change every time we move. It's like we're inside a living organism, Saskia murmured, running a hand over the carvings. Elena stepped forward. Enough theorizing. What does this mean for us? Can this tell us how to get out of here? Tomas hesitated before shaking his head. Not yet. But if this structure is as connected to this world as I think it is, then it's holding the answers. We just need to go deeper. Deeper? Victor snapped. You want us to walk further into the lion's den? Elena cut him off. We don't have a choice. Those things out there didn't follow us in here, which means either they're afraid of what's inside, or they're hurting us into something worse. The group pressed on, descending through the winding tunnels that seemed to grow warmer the farther they traveled. The walls became smoother, almost organic, and the symbols grew more elaborate, branching out like veins under the surface. After what felt like hours, they emerged into an immense chamber. Elena gasped. The room was dominated by a colossal, organic structure that rose from the floor like the central column of an ancient cathedral. Its surface shimmered with a chitinous sheen, the same material that covered the predators' bodies. Strands of glowing filaments extended from the column, pulsing faintly as though transmitting signals to the surrounding walls. What is this? Saskia whispered, her voice barely audible. It's a nerve center, Tomas said, his eyes wide with wonder. This is the heart of the world, or at least the heart of the species that controls it. Elena stepped closer, her boots crunching on the brittle, crystalline ground. As she neared the column, the hum grew louder, resonating in her chest. She could feel it, not just the sound, but the intent behind it. It's watching us, she said softly, her words sending a ripple of unease through the group. Before anyone could respond, the chamber was flooded with light. The walls came alive with movement, and the symbols shifted, rearranging themselves into a coherent pattern. A section of the column's surface peeled back, revealing a translucent membrane. Beyond it was a pulsating, liquid-filled chamber where a figure floated, humanoid but unmistakably alien. The team froze. The figure opened its eyes, large, luminous, and devoid of pupils, and the hum intensified, becoming a deafening roar. It's communicating, Tomas said, his voice trembling with both fear and awe. Communicating what? Malik asked, backing away. Tomas didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer to the column, holding his scanner out as if it might bridge the gap between them and the alien intelligence. The light shifted, coalescing into images that played out like holograms against the walls. The team watched in horrified silence as the history of this world unfolded before them. They saw a planet untouched by humans, where creatures like the predators had evolved to dominate every aspect of the ecosystem. These beings were not mere animals, they were architects, engineers of biology itself. They cultivated life, as humans might cultivate crops, altering the genetic makeup of species to suit their needs. Then came the revelations, a flash of a distant world, their Earth, teeming with Homo sapiens. The predators had discovered humanity through some interdimensional experiment gone wrong. Their species viewed humans as a destructive force, a cosmic anomaly that consumed and corrupted everything in its path. They see us as a virus, Saskia whispered, horrified. Another image, the cave portal, a deliberate creation by the predators to lure humans here. Not to communicate, but to study, dissect, and neutralize. Elena's blood ran cold. This was a trap, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They've been planning this for a long time. Before anyone could respond, the hum shifted again, becoming a sharp, high-pitched tone. The translucent membrane around the alien figure began to dissolve, and the chamber trembled. We need to leave, Victor said, his voice panicked. "We can't leave yet," Tomas argued, his gaze fixed on the symbols. "There's more to learn. This might be the key to—" A deafening roar interrupted him. The walls began to shift, sections of the chamber peeling away as if the structure itself were alive. From the openings emerged smaller versions of the predators, their bioluminescent eyes fixed on the intruders. "Now!" Elena shouted, grabbing Tomas by the arm and pulling him away from the column. The team bolted back toward the tunnel, their footsteps echoing through the chamber as the predators gave chase. The ground trembled beneath them, the walls pulsating as though the entire structure were awakening. They barely made it into the tunnel before the predators closed the gap. Elena turned, firing a flare from her emergency kit. The bright light startled the creatures, buying them precious seconds to escape. As they ran, Elena's mind raced. The predators hadn't just lured them into this world. They had intended for them to discover the truth. But why? To warn them? Or to ensure their eradication? The tunnel began to collapse behind them, forcing them to sprint faster. Finally, they emerged back into the alien forest, gasping for breath. The predators didn't follow. "What now?" Saskia asked, her voice shaking. Elena looked back at the collapsing tunnel, the faint hum of the alien structure still resonating in her chest. "We find the portal, and we destroy it before they find a way to use it against our world." The alien forest was darker now, its bioluminescent glow dimmed to an eerie twilight. Every sound seemed amplified, the soft rustling of leaves and the distant clicks of unseen creatures making the air thrum with tension. Elena led the team forward, her jaw clenched as her headlamp swept the path ahead. "We're close," Tomas said, his voice hoarse but certain. The scanner in his hands emitted a faint, rhythmic beep. "The interference spikes are strongest just ahead. The portal's there. Let's hope it's still active," Saskia muttered, keeping pace. Her eyes darted warily to the shadows, where shapes seemed to shift and vanish. "It has to be," Elena replied firmly, though her confidence felt fragile. Every step brought them closer to a confrontation they might not survive. Behind her, Victor trudged silently, his usually sharp gaze dulled by exhaustion and despair. Malik walked beside him, gripping a makeshift spear he'd fashioned from a jagged piece of metal. The forest thinned abruptly, giving way to a clearing dominated by the obelisk they'd seen earlier. It stood taller now, pulsing with an intense, otherworldly energy. Tendrils of light extended from its base, weaving into the ground like roots. "The portal," Tomas confirmed, his voice trembling with a mix of relief and dread. "Then we found our way out," Malik said, but his tone was cautious. "So, why does it feel like a trap?" Elena scanned the clearing, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. The silence was unnatural, oppressive. She raised a hand, signaling the team to halt. "They're here," she said quietly. As if summoned by her words, the predators emerged from the shadows, their glowing eyes piercing the gloom. Dozens of them encircled the clearing, their sleek, chitinous bodies shimmering in the obelisk's light. "We can't fight them," Victor whispered, his voice trembling. "We don't need to," Elena said, her mind racing. "We just need to destroy the portal." "That's suicide," Saskia hissed. "Maybe," Elena admitted. "But if these things find a way to our world, it's over. We can't let that happen." Tomas stared at the obelisk, his expression torn. The obelisk is the anchor point. If we overload its energy field, it'll destabilize the portal. But we'll need to be close. How close? Malik asked, though he already knew the answer. "Too close," Tomas replied grimly. The predators began to advance, their movements deliberate and predatory. Elena tightened her grip on the flare gun. "Saskia, Victor, Malik, cover us. Tomas and I will handle the obelisk." "No," Victor said, stepping forward. "You'll need me to buy you time." Before Elena could argue, Victor charged toward the nearest predator, shouting a guttural cry. The creature recoiled in surprise, giving the others a precious few seconds to act. "Go!" Elena shouted, pulling Tomas toward the obelisk. The clearing erupted into chaos. Saskia and Malik fought fiercely, using whatever weapons they could muster to keep the predators at bay. Victor's sacrifice held the creature's attention, but only for a moment. Elena reached the obelisk, her heart pounding as its energy pulsed around her. What do we do? Tomas didn't hesitate. He yanked a portable generator from his pack and began wiring it to the obelisk base. This should overload its core, he explained, his hands trembling. Once it starts, we'll have about 30 seconds to get clear. Then work fast, Elena said, keeping her eyes on the advancing predators. The creatures seemed to sense their intent. Their movements grew more frantic, their guttural screeches filling the air. I need more time, Tomas shouted. We don't have it, Elena replied, firing a flare directly into the face of an oncoming predator. The creature shrieked, its bioluminescent eyes flickering as it staggered back. Done, Tomas yelled, slamming the final wire into place. The obelisk began to vibrate, its light intensifying until it was almost blinding. Elena grabbed Tomas by the arm and pulled him away. Run! The team sprinted toward the forest, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Behind them, the obelisk's energy spiraled out of control, its tendrils snapping and writhing like angry serpents. They barely made it to the tree line when the obelisk exploded in a burst of light and sound. The shockwave sent them sprawling, and for a moment, everything was silent. When Elena opened her eyes, the clearing was gone. In its place was a smoldering crater, the portal destroyed. The predators were nowhere to be seen, their connection to the obelisk severed. We did it, Tomas said weakly, collapsing onto his back. Saskia and Malik staggered over, their faces pale and their bodies bruised. Barely, Saskia said, her voice hollow. Elena scanned the horizon, her heart heavy. Victor was gone, his sacrifice etched into the scorched earth. What now? Malik asked. Elena stared at the crater, her mind racing. Now we survive, and we make sure no one ever finds this place again.